We're on a tight timeline for tonight's 7 o'clock council meeting. And so I will call this budget workshop to order. Just a reminder to participants that we are in workshop format this evening. And Karen, I'm not sure if I'm seeing Karen on. I am not seeing Karen on. Patrick, can you note attendees for the record?
Yes, I will.
Excellent. And our first item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would welcome everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Dan is on the EDA meeting, so will not be available to put up the flag. So we will do it without the flag this evening. If you would like to stop your video in the bottom left-hand tray of Zoom, you are able to do so. I'll give everyone a moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have an open forum on tonight's budget workshop agenda. Were there any submissions for open forum this evening?
There were not. Okay.
Seeing no open forum comments, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the 2021 budget discussion. And before we get started, we did have a request come in through the EDA meeting previously, or the downtown group that was meeting via the EDA, for all of the budget materials to be posted online. And so if we could have the materials for the last budget workshop, that if we can have that updated, and then the materials for tonight also added to the agenda, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Patrick and Sandy to walk us through the planned presentation for tonight. And also, council, this was is intended to be fairly open in Q&A. And so we'll open it up for any opening remarks and then turn it right over to council for questions. Patrick, Sandy, any comments to kick us off?
No, Sandy, it's your show.
Yep, I'll just do a short presentation. Nothing changed too much from last time, but I did get some updated numbers from Washington County, which really didn't update too much. So I'll show you what I got. If everybody can see that on the screen.
We can.
Okay. And really it's kind of going through an overview of what we went through last time. I can get this to work right. Okay, there we go. And just going through the calendar again, we're at the August 24th meeting. We do have an opportunity on August 31st to have another meeting if needed. On the 14th, we do have it on we'll have it on the agenda to approve the certified proposed preliminary levy. And on Monday, October 12th, we will provide the final budgets, which will include all the non-levy budgets as well. I was intending on bringing them tonight, but I still feel that we need to shore up a few more things to get a good product to the council at this point. On December 14th, we will have then the ability then to do a truth and taxation public hearing and the adoption of the final 2021 levy and final budget. So this will just be the opportunity to do the preliminary levy, and we also have that opportunity in December to approve and adopt the final levy. Nothing changed here as far as the budgets that are affecting the levy. We're still at the same place that we were last time we talked on Monday. I won't go through the amounts at this point, but just so you know, nothing has changed at this point in time. And nothing has changed with the proposed levy, still at a overall 5.83%. We are adding the 50,000 for the capital equipment, as well as the 50,000 for the capital improvement. Everything else, and the general fund at 482,758, and everything is pretty much, like I said, the same as what it was last week. This gives the impact over the last few years as far as what type of increase we've had. We're pretty much in line with where we were in 2020. And, you know, with the exception of 2019, you know, we're right in line with where we have been in the last few years. This changed, like I said, very slightly. What is estimated at this point for the tax rate for 2021. The Washington County has their taxable value estimated at this point. Of course, things can change, and I think this is going to be more of a conservative approach. Last year, I think it was the same thing, and we ended up going a little bit further to the better. But they're saying there's a 1.2% taxable market value increase estimated, as well as the 1% fiscal disparity decrease, which offsets that taxable market value. So I think this is conservative, but yet right in line with where we were in 2020. I don't anticipate that to change.
Hey, Sandy,
Uh-huh.
can you back up? The 1% fiscal disparity decrease, what does that turn into for a dollar amount? Or it's 1%, but 1% of what? Give me some,
Yeah,
it'd be helpful to have some context around that.
You would have to go to the calculation at Washington County actually has a calculation of that. It's 1.2 million is what the overall disparity is normally for city of Forest Lake. So it's a subtraction from our taxable market value because of the disparity throughout the Twin Cities area. They try to smooth that out throughout the metro area. So they use this as a way to do that. But every year, what it does is it fluctuates based on what our growth is in our commercial area. And you know, when our growth increases, of course, our disparity then decreases. The funding that we have that actually subtracts from the taxable market value to get to the tax rate.
So I have to ask a basic question and forgive my ignorance. So a 1% fiscal disparity decrease, does that mean that, is that financially advantageous to us because or is that a disadvantage to us?
It increases our taxable market value, which then would increase our tax rate.
Okay.
But like I said,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't, the 1% decrease really isn't that much of an effect. You know, when you look at the 2021 to the 2020, you know, there really isn't much of an effect. I think the biggest effect that happened on that is last year, there was a 5.3% market value increase, whereas this year there's a 1.2% market value increase estimated at this point. So I think that had more of the effect on the tax rate than the disparity decrease.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And when you look at that, if you estimate the cost to a homeowner, and this really didn't change that much, there was maybe a few cents that changed from the last time we looked at it, but plugged it in now that they have the estimated tax impact worksheet on the Washington County website. You plug this in and it comes out for a $300,000 home. It comes out to $1,179. And when you look at the monthly, the weekly, and the per day, you know, it didn't change much, like I said, from last time. But comparing it to the 2020 property taxes that came out with the actuals, it was $1,169 last year. So that shows what kind of increase is expected, which is a $10 for the year. So, you know, like I said, this is just an estimate at this point. I like to think that Washington County likes to be conservative in their estimates. So, you know, this could go closer to what we were, even closer to what we were in 2020. So again, the next steps are continue to discussion of the preliminary 2021 levy if needed. Today, hopefully we'll have some good discussion on that as well. Certify the levy in September, finalize the 2021 budgets, discussion of the 10-year plan and strategic plan priorities, and continue discussion of the final 2021 budgets and bringing that final and levy and budgets to certify in December. And with that, that's all I have. I know there's going to be a lot of questions that will come our way, so we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sandy. Council members, with that, we will just open it up for questions, whichever direction you would like questions to go this evening. The floor is yours. Sam, go ahead.
Any kind of a levy increase, I don't care if it's 0.5%, is a big deal, especially in a year like now with this COVID thing and how people are being affected with their own wages and that sort of thing. And I think we want to be really, really careful about looking at maybe tightening some of those things up a little bit. And so I'm certainly going to be looking at that. I'll have some suggestions coming up. I know we can look at it downward at least, maybe a tiny bit. If we can't, we can't. But I think we certainly need to look at that. So that's all I have right at the moment.
Sam, to expand on that, do you have some, it sounds like you don't have any particular areas you want us to explore right now?
Not at the moment. I'll have something for the next meeting for sure. You know.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful. Other questions? Councilmember Gerard.
Thank you. I had sent a quick email out. There was a couple of questions I had, CNN, and hopefully you got that. It is what was in regards to a couple of line items in the budget, and I'm scrambling now to find it on my screen here. And of course, I can never find anything when I need to. But it was in regards to the road improvement. We put 50,000 in year one. I believe this year it's supposed to be 100,000, but it looked like in the budget it was only 50,000.
That was 50,000 in 2020, and then we increased it another 50,000 for 2021. So that brought it to 100,000.
But in budget numbers, it only showed 50.
For 2021, I believe it shows as 100,000.
I'll double check that. But
Okay.
you're right. But,
And I can bring that up again just to show it
Sandy,
again.
could you share your screen? That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're pulling that up, go ahead, Kathy.
I just think Paul might be looking at the dollar change, the dollar amount change, because that caught me as well. When I first looked at it, it threw me off a little bit. And then I realized there's a proposed fiscal year 2021 of 100,000, but then the next column over is showing the dollar change, the dollar amount change for 2021. And, you know, it took me a minute for that to register as well, so.
Yeah, that's correct. It was the dollar amount change. It said $100,000 for the capital improvement tax portion of the levy.
What percent of this is just general cost of living, wages, wage increases, you know, insurance, you know, general COLA? What percentage of the proposed 5.83?
Well, you've got a couple issues that are not COLA, and if you look at, for example, the capital improvement is just in addition to the paving fund, so that's really not a COLA adjustment. Nor is the debt service. The debt service, we're on the debt service schedule.
Okay.
So you immediately subtract also the capital equipment. So you have three portions of the levy that have nothing to do with COLA. That's the debt equipment improvement and debt service. Those are not COLA related. That's equipment that's balancing the budget related.
Right.
Which gets you to an increase of the general fund levy at 6.25%, but at least 3 to 3.5% that wages and benefits. And then Sandy, I think you have other things in there. We've got the communications position goes to full-time, so that's increasing that FTE to the full-time is because we only budgeted half year. There's adjustments for health insurance and other kinds of insurance. And Sandy, if you want to go ahead and comment on any of
What
that.
I can do is maybe I can pull up last week's and show you what, I mean, a big part of the increase also had to do with, we had decreases in revenue. There was revenue sources such as building permits. It was like $115,000 worth of revenue that we brought down because where the economy is today, we're just not getting the building permits that we had in the previous years. And so a big part of that increase was due to a decrease in revenues. I mean, we had 6% of an increase for insurance, probably a net of 2 to 3% in workers' comp. You know, the wages and salaries, you know, we're at that COLA increase and what was at 3%. So when you look at everything else, there really wasn't a huge increase in the overall budgets. It really had to do with that revenue decreasing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just at a top level, that's part of what makes this, while 5.83% increase is maybe on the higher end of what any of us would like. If you look at the areas where we actually have discretion, it's pretty limited from my perspective of what I've looked through, because again, a part of it is, Sandy, to your point you just made of it's the reduction of revenue or revenue that just isn't projected to come in, as well as things that are contractually established or committed to, and there's not a lot of, unless we're going to talk about some structural changes, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of discretionary type things that we can move on. You know, Sam, as I reflect on your comment and think about how do we, you know, make that 5.83% the right number for 2021, I am also looking at the, you know, the overall the tax rate change, and the fact that we are tax rate neutral does give me some, you know, that's a data point that I think is important this year, because it shows that we are not growing faster than our tax capacity is growing. And I think for a city of our size, and recognizing kind of some of the deficits that we have in the capital improvement fund in particular, that's an important data point for me.
I just want to make sure that we're talking about the perceptions that all this create, you know.
Completely.
And,
yep.
And so, you know, I agree with, there's some, you know, we have all the things settled with the police and public works and everybody else in those. So we have to honor those things. And I understand all that stuff. And I just want to make sure that we're mindful of what we're doing here and try to keep it as lean as we possibly can.
And I think that's where communication comes in, you know, communication to I mean, I think we did a really good job last year sort of framing, you know, the work that we did around the bond, and helping the community understand, you know, what our goals were with that. And once you were able to do that and frame that well, you know, the community really understood what it was that you were trying to accomplish. So, you know, I think that communication side of this is really vital, really critical. Mm-hmm. I too am, you know, conscious of the fact that we're in a really strange time right now with a lot of uncertainty. But I also know that our community has some expectations of us to move the city forward in a way that is responsible. I'm really not seeing, you know, what I'm seeing here. I'm really not seeing anything that's, you know, kind of, you know, too outside of really the direction that we should be going. You know, we created a strategic plan. We're trying to align budget with that strategic plan. Operationally, it is what it is. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty comfortable the direction we're going. You know, I have a couple of areas that I would like to potentially see a little additional investment in, and that's some of our parks and lakes funding. I know we've had Forest Lake Association come before us a couple of years in a row. You know, we are making some investments there. Those investments are down, you know, over what they were a number of years ago. You know, I think they make a good case for, you know, a pretty high percentage of taxes in this community being paid by our lakeshore owners, and that being probably our number one asset in the community. And so from my perspective, and I'm feeling pretty good about just about everything else. That's one area that I would just like to see us potentially make a little additional investment than we're currently making. And I did have a question to that end. How do we handle the weed harvester? Do we own the weed harvester and they pay the staff to run the weed harvester? Can you clarify that for me?
Oh, Dave, you still on the line there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So the current agreement with Forest Lake Association is that we hire a staff member and then run the harvester for 67 days. And what that total of labor comes to, then we invoice to the Lake Association and they reimburse us. So Public Works handles the harvester, the fuel on the harvester, the trucks, to dispose of all the weeds, to have an operator grab the truck back and forth. So everything except for the person driving the harvester around the lake. So we ran into an issue, I'd like to say 2 or 3 years ago, and then a couple years in a row, that there was volunteers that would come from Forest Lake Association and run it, and we were ending up, you know, on shore with the harvester. We were ending up with blown hydraulic lines. We were ending up with people feeling too full, and we had to shovel everything off of it. So it was decided we're better off finding the operator. They can still compensate us for that operator, but we want to have control of who's running it, to have some mechanical ability and to have some training. So as of right now, that's kind of the trade-off. We base it on a $15 an hour wage over 67 days, so it's roughly $8,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then the city, it's not even on our fund for weed harvester. It just kind of get tied into normal operations. We have a full-time employee that's hauling at least 2 loads a day, plus running a truck around. So it's just kind of an amount that doesn't really get tracked. It's just in normal operation. So if you have a guy mow them on, you'll hop off the lawn more quick and then go and grab the truck and all that. So that's how that kind of works. It seems to work well. We just show it as an expense, and then it crosses itself out on revenue, but it's easier, I think, to control that operator going forward, just so we can make sure it's on the city's dole, so they're insured when they're operating it and all that. So it's just, I think it makes more sense to do it that way. And it just seems to work. The last 2 years we've done it that way, and it works a lot better.
Okay.
Am I correct in thinking when they presented to us, they wanted to increase those hours? Am I correct for the harvester?
Yeah.
They wanted, yeah, they have, I was looking at their budget today. I got some submission. We'll hopefully clear this up for you by the next time we meet. But they're asking, sorry, I just got to get the spreadsheet here. For an additional $1,000 this year, and for next year, I should say, for weed harvesting activities. That's not included in the budget right now. And their total ask, just to be, and again, I have to go through this, but their total ask is an additional $13,000 to be included in the budget for weed harvesting and treatment and things like that. So we have to work through and verify some of that. There's a little bit of confusion on who pays for what, but by the next time we talk about this, we'll know better.
Because those were the two areas they identified that, I felt seemed reasonable for additional city investment, was the weed control and the increased harvester. And so that was going to be my next question, is have we quantified those two items specifically? I'd still like to see us pursue a partnership with them around that dock and fishing pier with our Parks, Trails and Lake Commission, but I feel like next year would really be a good planning year for that. But I think those two areas in particular, I think warrant a good look from our end.
Yeah, I got a spreadsheet from Jerry that attempts to explain this, and I need to go through it, to be quite honest with him, understand what he's saying here. So, but we'll know.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to look at that spreadsheet with you, Patrick, because our total budget for the weed harvester is 62,000, and he's lumping in Clear Lake expenses inside that Forest Lake one. So that some of that budget isn't quite correct, because the weed harvester should actually be zero, because we're not budgeting any dollars for weed harvester, and that's
that's the clarification. I mean, we really need to present to the council
Yes.
how much we contribute versus what they contribute. And we don't have, David, and we were going to talk at Wednesday's meeting, staff meeting, but we will sit down and together and figure this out, because it's definitely not clear on how much the city participates versus what they participate. And I think I don't want to give you a false impression that it's more or it's less or whatever. I want to make sure that you know what the city's contributing to this organization, and make sure that we're right before we present. I think I only got this either this morning or on Friday afternoon, so we'll take some time to go through it.
Yeah, because I know there are some expenses paid to the watershed. There are some paid directly to Fourth Liquid, so if we can sort through that, that would be really helpful to me.
Yeah, and some of the magic on what's paid to the watershed then bills the city for some of that again. So, we really have to understand how this all meshes together.
Okay.
Is there any, as we're thinking about that request from the watershed from the Lake Association, is there any ability to meet their needs through some increased participation from the watershed district, that there's some additional pass-through revenue or matching funds? If we're going to, increase our portion, is there any appetite or opportunity for discussion for the watershed district to provide some matching funds that help to get them where they need to be, but also recognizing it's kind of a tough year for the city?
Yeah, I think it's always worth talking to the watershed district about either matching, upping their contribution, because the Lake Association does try to help the lake keep healthy and green and all that. So it's worth a discussion. I'll be happy to have that discussion, and we'll be happy to let them give us contribute more money. So, yeah.
I do know that with the watershed, they are shifting their focus a little bit more to the recreational part of the lake. They're very still involved in phosphorus and everything else, but there's been a noticeable shift in the last year with their discussion to do more to make the lake more recreational. So they probably would be open to a discussion.
Yeah, I think that's worth pursuing. I also like Councilmember Bystrom's point on giving some commitment to the Lake Association on evaluating in 2021 opportunities for a dock or pier. I think that's probably funded not so much financially as in cash out the door, but more as in staff resource or some maybe joint participation in some grant or seeking some grants. It's more of a planning phase, and probably other than staff effort, zero expense other than, again, staff effort. I appreciate that there is expense associated with that. But that, it's on our mutual working list, but we're not looking to fund that until probably 2022. If 2021 is the planning year for that project.
Mark, could I backtrack? Just,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please.
I just wanted to comment on a comment that Councilperson Bystrom made, and rightfully so, about the strategic plan. I mean, it's very important part of our overall planning for the city of Forest Lake. It kind of points out our goals and that kind of thing. The only question I have about that, though, really is, I wonder what that strategic plan would look like if we were working on it now during a pandemic. It might be completely different. And so I think we just need to kind of keep those things in mind. And it works into the overall decisions that we make on this taxing. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. Councilmember Gerard.
Going back to my earlier discussion on the capital improvement, the extra 50,000 for the road, and so Sandy has it showing, hey, there on 100,000. But if you go to the 22-page report she sent us by line item, when you get to the capital improvement fund 211, there's a line item for $50,000 year over year. I took that to be capital improvement from the tax levy. Is that something different?
No, I didn't think I gave you the 211, but if I did, it probably wasn't updated at that point. I thought I gave you the budgets for just the general fund, but the budgets will be reflected for the 100,000.
Oh, okay. So then my other question, and hopefully the answer is yes. On page 15 of that same report, the fire department shows a line item for 82,000 in insurance. And I know we moved it, all the insurance to finance. My question was, is the fire department special? Did we miss it?
They are.
Please tell
They
me
are
that.
special.
They are special. They actually get charged. They get charged for the insurance because we actually get reimbursed 25% from Columbus. So we do have to reflect that expense in the report so that we get the actual reimbursement back that we are due from Columbus.
Thank you. I was so happy. I thought I found 82,000.
And you are correct. The property tax line in the capital improvements should read 100,000, not 50,000. And it is a 50,000 across. So we'll make sure we get that right.
Thank you.
And just to go back for a second to the, this kind of the story that we're talking about with the tax increase. And I agree that, times are a little bit different, but if you would remove the dollar amounts that are included in the capital equipment, capital improvement, and debt service, you're talking about, somewhere around a 3.8% tax increase only. So it really is those three things that are driving. And then if you add on top of that, or if you only say we've lost 115,000, so if we had that $115,000 left, we'd be at a 4.7% increase. So the story is the lost revenue and trying to match what our goals are. So those are two big items in this budget right now.
And that's kind of where I was trying to get at when I asked the question about, cost of living and that kind of thing. So thank you, Patrick, for kind of reframing that in a way that's makes a lot more sense than where I was going with it. I did have, if it's all right, Mayor Bain, I did have one question about the position that we're adding by funding or eliminating the contracted lawn care and athletic field maintenance and snow plowing. Can you, and you may have said it last week, can you remind me what is the goal with that position? Is that a parks person?
That's a parks maintenance person.
Parks maintenance.
Dave, if you're on, you can maybe do the best job of describing that.
Yep. So in a roundabout way, up until 2 years ago, we didn't even have a a fully funded parks maintenance person.
Okay.
So slowly but surely, we're trying to get park maintenance people back. And on top of that, just eliminate contracted services. So in 2020, 2019, we funded a position to take back parks mowing. That position didn't even get funded till about September of 2019. So we actually took over all of our parks mowing in 2020. And this position would give us another 2,080 hours of park maintenance by just eliminating the Fenway contract and the city center contract. So slowly but surely, we're trying to get a park maintenance staff here in Forest Lake because right now everybody used to be in streets. So you could never track what you were doing for parks hours. It was take a guy from Blacktop and have him mow lawn, or take a guy out of the street sweeper and have him go and cut a tree down. So we're not trying to separate public works, but we're trying to, and a long about way, we want to have a parks division where you're going to have a person running that department that's going to know what parks need maintenance, that are going to be able to handle calls when they come in, work more in line with Jamie and activities to set up for events and all that. But with only being funded a half a person, it was just never positive. So we're trying to do two things: is eliminate all the contract mowing that, we're paying almost $60,000 a year for Fenway to get mowed once a week. Well, why not have a full-time parks maintenance person that will mow it there one day a week, but then we'll have a lot of other days freed up to do other maintenance. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but that's what we're kind of trying to get to.
No, that's really helpful for me, because I feel like we sometimes not really kick the can down the road where parks are concerned, but we defer a lot where the parks are concerned. And so the investment and the human resources to keep the maintenance side of them up, I think, is really huge. I think oftentimes you can, find grant funding for, programmatic things or improvements. But it's that ongoing maintenance to keep them operational, and especially now in the COVID world, when they're being so highly utilized, I think is really, really important. So I appreciate the clarification on that, Dave. Thank you.
Yep.
Council members, other questions or additional analysis that you would like to request for our next discussion? We are 20 minutes before our planned end date for this evening's workshop. I guess maybe a time to ask a question around desire to have a follow-up workshop session on the 31st. I know Councilmember Husnick, it sounded like you had some additional comments that you wanted to maybe perhaps bring forward. I know that there are other funds that are outside of the general fund that we haven't started exploring, and so I am open to us having a check-in on general fund on next Monday. And if you are ready, staff, to continue the discussion on other funds, maybe we take a blended approach where we spend as much time as necessary to get general fund squared away. If that is a short conversation, so be it, but then maybe we transition to some of the other funds. I'd like to keep those conversations moving if possible, but I'm open to feedback here.
Well, I think we have to make sure that we understand what the council's wishes as far as the tax levy goes. That's obviously the first and foremost thing that we have to decide on, because we have until December to pass a budget, or in the schedule of November or October. But I don't think I hear anybody wanting to raise the tax levy any more than it is now, unless I missed my guess. So all I've heard is that we should be looking at it again and maybe trying to find a way to bring that down a little bit more. So if we're comfortable with the tax levy the way it is and setting it at this rate until we can go further, that's, or do you want to do that first? Do you want to try to get that down before later in the fall? And then that's a discussion on what we can adjust within the general fund, unless there's a true objection to anything right now that comes to the top of your head. And then we do have to get to the other funds, and those are important funds, the water and the sewer funds, to go through those and to make sure we're all on the same page with those.
Me personally, I'm comfortable with doing as you say, Patrick. I mean, keeping it at the 5.83% and seeing if we can whittle it down from there. If we can't, we can't. I understand that. But that's the approach that I would use, or that I would be comfortable with anyways.
Thanks, Councilmember Husnick. If I may maybe suggest two things for next Monday, if council is open to having a budget workshop on Monday, August 31st at 6:30. Two things that would be helpful for me to close the close out the conversation on the preliminary levy. And remember, again, reminder to council that this is a preliminary, we are doing a preliminary approval. We cannot go larger than, but we could always make smaller if we chose to make smaller by December. But two things would be helpful for me. One is additional discussion with the Lake Association and kind of clarifying weed harvester and what is the staff suggested contribution if there's any increase for 2021. That would be helpful to bring that conversation to a close. And then secondly, it would be helpful, we've talked about the different dynamics that are pushing on rate, but if we could see a plus and minus schedule of the 5.83%, what is the impact, both plus and minus, of the additional revenue and then the changes, so that we're able to see kind of here's the reconciliation of that 5.83% by category to the extent that it's, that we can break out. You did this, your memo teed up the qualitative factors for that, Sandy, the memo you had last week where you kind of talked about those factors. Here's how much was because of workers' comp, here's how much because of health insurance. Just putting the math in that so we can see, the 5.83% is because of this much because of, lost building fees, and this much because of, that would be helpful to just, again, kind of, that lines it all up and then gives us the ability to step back and, in full context, does this make sense?
Do that.
And I did note the reduction in the proposed 2021 in those building permits and planning and zoning permits as well, which I think is really wise. We don't have a crystal ball. So to be able to look at the budget in whole, with that additional context, I think is really important to do. So thank you, for reflecting probability. So.
So what I hear is the lake fund reconciliation, lake request reconciliation, reconciliation of the levy adjustments, and then starting on the other funds. Okay.
Mara, we can't hear you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I think I did a whole bunch of talking and nobody heard me.
You are correct.
Did you? Sandy, did I come through when I was trying to describe the reconciliation of rate
Yes.
of the,
Yeah.
okay.
The dollars.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when you couldn't hear me, I essentially just repeated that plus the Lake Association, and Patrick jumped in and summarized perfectly. So on top of that, council members, we have an additional week. So if anything else comes up in your review or in your conversations with community members, certainly get that feedback over to Patrick and Sandy so that they're able to reflect that for Monday's workshop. But it does look like we are looking for a workshop on Monday, and then whatever additional funds are ready for review, I think we're ready to tackle that as well. All right. I don't mean to cut the conversation short because we do have an additional 12 minutes before our council meeting is ready, or before our council meeting kicks off. Is there anything further, other questions, comments we would like to make at this time? I'm not seeing anything. Quick question related to logistics. Are we staying on this meeting for our council meeting?
Good question.
Yes, we are. Yeah, Mayor, yes. Sandy, can you stop sharing your screen so we can, there we go. Yes, we're staying in this same room, so I'm not going to shut this off. It will continue on right into the council meeting that starts at 7 o'clock.
Perfect.
So
If there
really-
are no further, if there are no further questions or items for our workshop, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
I motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And Karen, could we have a roll call vote to adjourn?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And we are adjourned, and we'll see you all here in about 10 minutes.